Hello everyone, Burger Brush here, and today I will go over the Path of Exile endgame system, which is called maps. When you finish Act 10 and you quest with Commander Kirak, he will start giving you what is called maps, which can look like this. And maps is basically the endgame system for Path of Exile, where you open up maps in your map device in your hideout, and you go into like other worlds where there are a bunch of enemies for you to kill. Maps can be broken down into white maps, yellow maps, red maps, and then also unique maps. And maps, just as gear, can have different form of rarities. So you have a normal map here, a magic map here, and a rare map here. And you also have what are called unique maps that are very unique maps in both layout, monsters, and bosses, but they are always the same. While other maps, such as this Scriptorium map, I can have different modifiers on it, which will therefore have different monsters inside it, and it can also have different layouts while being inside the map. The boss will always be the same though, so keep that in mind. When you add rarity to a map, such as this map right here, this cemetery map being magic, it will gain affixes, which will make the map harder. Like this one, for example, has monster chaos resistances and monster elemental resistances. So if I do any form of chaos or elemental damage, the mobs will be a lot more tankier to that specific form of damage. But what this also means is that there is higher item quantity, item rarity, and monster pack size within this map. So what that basically means is that item quantity is the amount of items that drop, meaning more gear, more money. Item rarity is the rarity of the items that will drop, aka will I drop normal items or will I drop rare items, for example, or even unique items, and so on. And monster pack size, quite easy to understand, is the amount of density of monsters in your map. So if you have higher monster pack size, there will be more monsters for you to kill, which also will increase the amount of experience that you gain, and once again the amount of loot that you will get as well. Now, a really big part of the mapping system in Path of Exile is what is called the Atlas skill tree that can be shown if you hit Ctrl G after finishing the acts. Now, at first glance, it may look really scary, but don't worry about that. We're going to go into more detail about what this is and what it actually does. And this is one of the best things that GGG added to this game, because what this allows you to do is that it allows you to control what form of content you actually have when you are mapping. Just like your regular skill tree, you need to unlock the skill points for the Atlas skill tree as well. And in order to unlock skill points, in order to get these nodes, is that you take a map, tier 1 to tier 16, and you go to the Atlas by clicking G. Here is the Atlas. And every time that you complete a map, if you complete it with a specific objective in mind, you will be received a skill point for the Atlas skill tree. Let's look at this here, for example. This is a Scriptorium map, tier 1. It says at the middle here, bonus, kill boss of magic or higher version of this map. So if I were to put this Scriptorium map in my map device, I would therefore be receiving a Atlas skill point if the rarity of the map is a magic or higher. But as you can see here, this is only normal. So I would need to use a Orb of Transmutation on this one, so it is magic. Now I could put it in the map device, activate it, enter the map, and once I kill the boss in this Scriptorium map that is magic rarity or higher, I would then receive my skill point that I can use in my Atlas skill tree. Something very important to notice here is that white maps, as we call them, are maps between tier 1 and 5. Yellow maps, as we call them, are between map tier 6 and 10, and red maps, as we call them, are between tier 11 up to 16. And depending on what map you do, depends on what the actual bonus objective is. So if you look at some tier 6 maps, aka yellow maps, tier 6, tier 10, as you can see here around the Atlas, it shows that the bonus is to kill the boss of a rare version of this map, meaning I would need to use an Orb of Alchemy on this Castle Ruins map to turn it into a rare yellow map, and therefore I could now go and complete this for my Atlas skill point. And the same thing goes for red maps, is that you need to kill the boss of a corrupted rare version of this map as well. So I would need to use an Orb of Alchemy and a Vol Orb on my map in order to actually gain my Atlas skill point if I complete this map and I kill the boss. You also have unique maps which are scattered around the Atlas, as you can see here. They have different names, and the unique maps cannot be influenced with different rarities as they are unique, and therefore if you get a unique map, all you have to do is just complete the map, meaning kill the boss at the end. So if I were to open this Careblade, Wolf, Pax, Den Underground River map, I would just need to complete the map by killing the boss, and I would receive my Atlas skill tree points. I wouldn't have to influence the rarity in any way. Now, as you go along and you collect your Atlas skill points, you would start inserting them into your Atlas skill tree, of course. Now, like I said earlier, at first glance, this looks to be a lot of information, and it absolutely is, because Path of Exile is a now relatively old game, and every time they add a league or a update, they usually add whatever content in that league to the core game later on as well. So this game has been out for many years now. It's had a lot of leagues, and therefore it has a lot of different form of content that you can do inside your maps. There's also a lot of content outside of maps, which I can talk about in another video, but in this video we're focusing specifically on maps. So everything that you see around here is ways that you can influence when you open maps, and what kind of content you can have inside the maps that you open. So let's take a first glance at the smaller path nodes that you have in the Atlas skill tree. These ones, for example, are adjacent map drop chance. 2% chance for one monster in each of your maps to drop an additional connected map. Basically, what this means is that when you are in maps, you want to keep dropping more maps from monsters so you can keep mapping. You want to sustain maps, right? And what this one does is that if you go to the Atlas by clicking G once again, you can see that there are small lines between certain maps. This means that they are connected. So this Scriptorium map is connected to this Silo map. So if I were to get a bunch of these nodes here, for example, and I would apply, I would now have 2% chance for one monster in each of your maps to drop an additional connected map. I would have that 3 times, so obviously I could go up here to the right and check my show stats tab, and it would say 6% chance for that to happen. So if I now do Scriptorium maps, I have a higher percent chance to drop a Belfry, a Precinct, or a Silo map because they are connected to my Scriptorium. Now, I will not go over every single node in this skill tree because that would be an hour-long video. I'm just going to show you a little bit about what you can actually do, different ways that you can influence your maps, and what kind of content there kind of is really quickly. So you have the smaller nodes here, and there are a couple of different smaller nodes. If you go here towards the middle, there are also these green nodes that are called map drop duplication. 0.5% chance for map drops to be duplicated. So if you drop a map, you drop 2 maps. Pretty simple. You also have this one up here called map modifier effect. 2% increased effect of modifiers on your non-unique maps. And modifiers are the different mods that you can see here on the map, such as monsters have 70% increased area of effect, they have more monster damage, yada yada. These nodes right here would make these actually stronger. So instead of 70, you would have, 70 times 0.2% chance, stuff like that basically. And they would have like more area of effect if you have a bunch of these nodes. Like if I would get all of these nodes, it wouldn't be 70, it would be like maybe 75 or 80%, right? Depending on the percentages, of course. But basically what that means is that to you, you're like, oh, I'm just making my maps harder. What is the point of that? But so this is how maps work as well. The number of affixes, prefixes and suffixes that you have on your maps, the number of modifiers influence the amount of item quantity, rarity, and monster pack size. And so does the strength of these modifiers as well. So if I have a bunch of modifiers, like on this one, for example, you see that there's a bunch of modifiers on this beach map. The item quantity is at 98%, and so is the rarity, and so is the monster pack size. So having a lot of modifiers and the modifiers being very strong might be very hard content for you to actually do, but remember that the rewards are therefore increased. So that's something to think about when you're going around and getting some of these smaller nodes in the Atlas tree. Also in the middle, you also have item quantity and rarity as well in this circle and in the middle of the circle as well. And that can be quite interesting if you're looking to just get more loot in general while mapping. Now, you also have other nodes such as this one, for example, like your maps contain an additional strongbox. Like you enter your map, there's a strongbox, you open it, you kill a bunch of monsters, then it gives you a bunch of more loot. You have, for example, this one, which I really like. Shrine nodes. This one, for example, here, your maps contain an additional shrine. Shrine is something you just click on. It gives you a character buff, like you have twice the speed, you have critical strikes all the time, you know, stuff like that, like 100% crit chance basically, and so forth and so forth. And there's a lot of different content in Path of Exile. Harbingers here, Legion encounter here. Your maps have 15% chance to contain ritual altars. There are so much different form of content in Path of Exile, and by getting some of these nodes, you can influence how often you encounter those mechanics, and also how hard they are, and also how rewarding they are as well. For example, over here, war supplies. Each legion in your maps contain an additional war horde, which is basically a chest full of loot. Legion chests released from stasis in your maps release other monsters and chests within 100% increase range. That is basically the Legion content, how you kind of interact with that form of content, and then the Warhorde is just a bunch of more extra loot. So depending on what content you enjoy, you should be focusing your Atlas skill points into those specific nodes. There's also something that is very interesting in Path of Exile that is very, very good that they added, because you might not actually enjoy every form of content. Like, for example, I am not a big fan of Blight. I don't really like the tower defense system that Path of Exile has. Therefore, you have these nodes right here on each side. For example, this one right here, your maps have no chance at all to contain Blight encounters, but your maps have a plus 2% chance to contain other extra content. So if I were to get this one right here, I would now have no Blight encounters in any of my maps. It would not be possible for me to encounter Blight if I just map normally. And therefore, I would have a higher chance of having other form of content. Because basically in Path of Exile, a lot of the content that they have has a 10% chance to randomly spawn in your maps. We have like Delirium, Metamorph, and Contracts and Blueprints, Ritual Altars, Legion Encounters, Sacred Grove, Expedition, Abyss, and Breach. So if I were to turn off Blight and I were to turn off Metamorph and maybe Rogue Markers and stuff like that, I would therefore have 2% chance per thing. So you can see here kind of how much this adds up to, all of the things that you got. And therefore I would have a higher chance to encounter Mirrors of Delirium. Now maybe I really love Delirium as well, so I go and I grab these nodes over here. So 4% for the smaller nodes and then 10% for the big node. So now I have, your maps have a 22% chance to contain a Mirror of Delirium because I turned off a bunch of other content and I also got that which you seek. And therefore now, basically every map that I enter, there's going to be like a 1 in 4th chance that I have a Delirium mirror. So I can encounter that content that I enjoy a lot more than I can encounter other forms of content that I don't enjoy. So the thing that you want to do when you reach the endgame system in Path of Exile is that you want to clear a bunch of maps, you want to complete the map objectives, and you also only have to do that once in order to get your skill tree point, and then you can focus on, you know, getting all the nodes in the Atlas skill tree for all the content that you enjoy. Now, another really big thing as well is that they have these things called keystone passives as well, which are these larger ones like Twist of Fate right here, Singular Focus. Now all of these have very different ways that they influence your form of content and the way that you map as well. Some big ones though are, for example, the gateways, which allows me to activate this one and therefore I can activate this one on the other side, and I can keep going over here. Otherwise, in Path of Exile, you have to connect your skill points. Otherwise, you can't really get anything. Like over here, I can't really get this without like going all the way over there, connecting all the points that leads up to it. But with the gateways, you can just jump from over there to over here. And now, for example, I can get Stream of Consciousness if I want to. So your maps cannot be modified by fragments other than Divine Vessels, but my maps have a 50% more base chance to contain extra content. That's insane. So I just have more base content again. Like I have more delirium and all this stuff, right? So I could just go ahead and get that if I want this over here, and then I get some nodes over here, and now all of a sudden I'm over here and I get this. Another big thing also is some of these bigger keystone passives that are in regards to bosses. For example, this one, this one, this one up here, this one, and this one influence the difficulty of the endgame bosses that Path of Exile has to offer. What these do is that these keystone passives turn the bosses into the Uber version, as they are called. For example, here the absence of symmetry and harmony is level 85. This is the Eternal Worlds boss, and meaning that he is now level 85 means that he is a lot stronger. He takes less damage, he does more damage, he has more attack speed, and he is therefore much harder. Obviously, the Uber versions and all that stuff will have better rewards, but keep in mind that the Uber versions of the bosses in Path of Exile are extremely hard and usually requires you to have a very specific build in order to kill them. Now, one last thing as well that is very important for you to know is that if you go to your atlas, you will see that you have all the way from tier 1 maps all the way up to yellow, and higher tier maps all the way up to tier 16 maps if you do not influence your atlas in any way or form other than what you have from the start. So basically what you do is that you do tier 1 maps into tier 2, and then you drop a tier 3 map, and you drop a tier 4 map, etc. And you just keep progressing to get higher maps and therefore do harder content, and so on and so on. And basically the tier of the map is what the level of the monsters inside the map are going to be, and therefore kind of how difficult they are to kill. So if you're doing like a tier 1 map, if I'm not mistaken, the monster level is level 68 to level 69. So right when you finish Act 10, you're going to be level 68 or 69. You can start doing tier 1 maps quite easily. If you have really good gear, you might as well even be able to do tier 5 map or tier 6 maps. But remember that the monster are therefore going to be higher level and harder. But if you're really strong, you can do that and so on. And then you just work your way up and you do harder and harder content. And there are nodes in the Atlas skill tree, for example, Shaping the Skies, that gives maps found have a 15% chance to be 1 tier higher. So if you kill a bunch of monsters, you can drop higher tier maps. But don't worry, if you don't have these nodes, you can still drop higher tier maps in your maps, because I do believe that the way that the system works is that if I do a Scriptorium map, the monsters are level 68. When you kill rare monsters, they will drop higher tier gear and map. So if I kill like a bunch of white mobs or normal mobs in the map, they will drop like level tier 1 maps. But if I kill a rare mob, he can drop tier 2 maps. And the bosses also have this system where they drop higher tier maps if they actually do drop something. So even if you don't have stuff like this, you can still progress your atlas and get higher tier maps. And there's also one last thing that is very important. You might really enjoy doing some form of specific maps in Path of Exile. This is very common for a lot of people, that they find one or several maps that they enjoy more than other maps due to the bosses, due to the general mobs that are in the map, or due to how the layouts are usually generated. For example, Waste Pool, Toxic Sewer, Beach. These are some of my favorite maps, and I know they are very commonly liked as well across the Path of Exile community. The problem though is that when you get to a higher level of your character and you become very strong, you want to do high tier maps because it is the equivalent like experience and loot that you kind of want to get based on the strength of your character and the level that you are. So when I'm level 95, I don't want to sit and do tier 1 maps because the loot is going to be bad and the mobs are going to give low XP because they're like level 69 mobs and I'm 95. So how do I do waste pool map over and over again if a waste pool map is just tier 6 and I want to do tier 16 maps? That is where Voidstones come into play. So when you are doing the endgame system of mapping in the beginning, when you talk to Kirak, he's going to give you a set of quests. He's going to give you a large quest line that you need to do in order to progress the game. And they're going to tell you to like do tier 1 map and do tier 5 and blah blah blah, and then you're going to start encountering bosses when you get to like tier 9, 10 and 11 and so on. And then when you get to tier 16 maps, the quest will tell you to go kill the bosses that I talked about earlier, Eater of Worlds and Searing Exarch. Now the good thing about this is that if you fail to kill these bosses, they will give you the boss again and again and again if you just keep doing one map. So let's say I do a tier 16 map, Kirak gives me the invitation to go kill Eater of Worlds, I fail it, I just need to do another tier 16 map and he's going to give me the invitation again, and I can just keep going until I kill the boss, or you can get someone to come in and kill it for you. Now keep in mind, you do not want to have these keystones when you attempt these bosses early on, because it is very vital that you get these void stones. Because basically what the void stone does is that the void stone, first and foremost, when you put them inside these sockets down here, you have some sockets here for void stones. I can also take them out if I don't want them to influence my atlas, but this time I really want to do that. So I drop the void stone from a boss, I put it in, it now upgrades the tier of all the maps. My scriptorium is now tier 4. My waste pool is tier 9 and my toxic sewer is also tier 9. Hey, that's great. I wanted to do, I love doing waste pool. I want to do that over and over again. So now I can do that with a higher tier if I want to. And killing the quest bosses, Searing Exarch, which is the red guy, and Eater Worlds, which is the blue guy, you will get 2 void stones. So let's say that I put in the void stones here. I now have Scriptorium tier 8, and my waste pool is tier 13, and my toxic sewers is also tier 13. Great. Now there are 2 more void stones that you can get, and that is by defeating the Maven and also by defeating the Shaper and Elder Realm, which is another endgame boss. If you defeat them, you also get 2 more void stones, and I will have 4 void stones in total that I can socket in to make all my maps tier 16. Now every map on the atlas is tier 16, and I can focus on doing any map that I enjoy. And also, a very important thing about the ceremonial voidstone, the decayed voidstone, omniscient voidstone, and the grasping voidstone as well, they have different names depending on what boss they are from. They all have maps dropped in areas have a 25% chance to be 1 tier higher. So if you want to sustain high tier maps, if you want to keep dropping high tier maps, and when you're doing tier 16, you want to keep dropping tier 16 maps and so on, you want these voidstone to help you sustain your maps. Also, one final thing before I forget is that you also have these favorite map slots that you can unlock. Right now I have already unlocked all the favorite map slots, but usually you can just look at them and it will say specifically what you have to do. Like it can be like you need to kill a specific guardian boss, which is like a mini boss in order to kill some of the endgame bosses, or you need to kill some of the endgame bosses as well, and you will start unlocking these favorite map slots. And basically what the favorite map slots is that once you unlock 1, 2 or several of them, you get this little circle in here. I can click on one of the circles and then I can click on a map. So let's say I click on beach map. Basically what this does is that now when I have beach map favorited, whenever I kill monsters in maps, it will have a higher chance of dropping beach map than it will have other maps. And the more you favorite certain maps as well, I can favorite beach map over and over and over and over again for all my favorite map slots. And what this means is that I will have a much higher chance of dropping beach map compared to I have of dropping other maps. Now you can still drop other maps, but beach map will be a higher chance of me dropping. There's also a node in the atlas tree here that says maps found have a 200% more chance to be favorite maps, But if you don't drop that specific favorite map, the non-favorite maps found in your maps drops as basic currency instead. So I will drop money or I will drop my favorite map. And because of these nodes where you drop adjacent maps and everything, there is a very common tactic that you do where you have one connected map. So if I'm doing a bunch of beach maps, I will drop the connected map, Desert Spring, or I will drop my beach map. And then if I go and do my Desert Spring map, it will drop my connected map, which is also my favorite maps, like 11 times. So it will drop a bunch of beach maps. So you need to keep that in mind, that there are different forms of strategies for how to sustain certain maps. And there are a lot of systems behind this that I'm not going to go into detail for. But that is basically the endgame Path of Exile system, which is mapping, the Atlas tree, the Atlas skill tree, Voidstones, and how maps work and how you need to roll your maps in order to get everything. I know it was a long video, but there is obviously a lot of information that needs to be told for everyone to understand kinda even the basics of mapping, because there's still so much you can go into. And as you can see here, the Atlas skill tree is huge because there are just so much different form of content that you can encounter in Path of Exile. But still, thank you very much for watching the video. I appreciate it a lot. Feel free to drop a like, follow me on Twitch as well. Subscribe here on YouTube, and have a great day.